Hello and welcome to day 111 of 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tomlins Nyback, and let's jump right into it. We're here discussing Black issues in America. What's working, what's not? Are we growing, stagnating, going backwards? As a group, a community, we have plenty of superstars, highlights as the NBA Finals are going on. A lot of black men jumping up and down, doing a lot of incredible feats and stuff like that. But what about the mass of black folks in America? Um, what about reparations? I was challenged recently about being exclusive about um, in making the black issue central and making the black issue the primary focus of any discussion about um, equal rights and all that before diversification and inclusion. Well, I like those are great terms, appropriate terms. A lot of blacks are not the only aggrieved group in America, not the only marginalized group by far in America, but there is one pivot on which blacks can claim exclusivity, and that is in the area of reparations. The government said way back when, that they'd give us that 40 acres and a mule. Even the blacks who got that faced poisoning of their animals, burning of their crops, sacking of their communities. Long way to go. So, this project is very appropriate, on that alone. When the Japanese were released, they got some reparations. Japanese were released from internment during World War II. You find Native Americans, they get land grants. You go up and down in the continental United States, I-25, especially New Mexico, that there are casinos, that they're specifically uh, directed that money, that revenue goes towards Native American prosperity. You know, you, but I defy you to find an area where blacks are claiming an exclusive right to a resource, process, service, and have that go well politically in America. Lot of things going on with that. So I don't want to get off in that tangent, but yes, there's a lot of wrong things going on in the world, and I believe if the United States gets off its duff and does right by black folks, reparations, as well as all the equal rights and civil rights and social integration and all that stuff, those symbols. We got a lot of symbols. We didn't get tangible assets. Other groups get tangible assets when they step up to the plate and, uh, you know, um, define access to rights and resources. I'd be happy if some of these other groups were like, you know what, we are we're an aggrieved, marginalized group. There's too many to mention, but black folks need their reparations. Black folks are entitled to their reparations. Black folks earned their reparations. Black folks worked hundreds of years with no, without proper compensation for their labor. You do that today, you're going to have a problem. But back then in the slavery times, those hundreds of years, centuries of that institution, blacks were not repaid. We were given enough to live, to go to work the next day. Much like we do with labor, American labor. We've mitigated we stretched out some of the way labor is. I labor. I'm still a blue collar guy. I'm hoping to move. I'm changing my mind, doing a mental thing right now as far as money and finances. But I still go to work. I work heavy boxes, logistics company. So I feel you, blue collar employee. Uh, but what I'm saying is, see, now the slaves did that, and they were not given bonuses, overtime, and whatnot. You know, sun up to sundown, with scarce, uh, or inadequate resources to survive. We got to put slavery in its worst light. Then we begin to have some compassion for the slave issue. So, if we begin, think about reparations, look up the word, it's all over. You hear blips and blurbs. Maybe in the presidential election, you'll hear it again. Hopefully, it won't be a political tool or beacon to get to motivate some others to vote. There are a lot of people of color in the race, more of that going on. We'll see how far we go. So two thoughts have emerged since beginning this project. First thought has two parts. You're familiar, if you've been around here, any part, I'm going to keep repetition, keep hammering it home, hammering it home. First thought has two parts. First part is, does the black mind of slavery, as the institution still holds sway? Is it still alive in the minds of black folks in America? Those descended from slaves, are we just birthing and promoting an attitude, way of life, looking for the handout, looking for the hand up, expecting to be rescued by government, you know, not knowing how to leverage power in America, but being ignorant of how money works, how political power works, leverage. I could probably do a whole piece on leverage and whatnot. And the same, the second idea from that first thought is, does the white mind of entitlement, privilege, is there, do they have a prevailing geist in whiteness, expectation of favor in America and the world? Is that a prevailing attitude with white folks, especially in America? Are the white folks spoiled, so to speak? Stick around, you know how I feel. But I want you to think. I don't try not to be so explicit. I just abstract it a little bit. You come to your own conclusions. We're still friends. I still love you. It's all good. And the second thought is for financial literacy. We need to understand, look around YouTube on financial truth, financial terms. Understand how intangible financial assets are in America. It's really, it's not just digitized, but long before computers took over the world, accountants and creative financiers manipulated money and stuff. I mean, you got people that we never hear about, never see, but they're billionaires, or they control large, huge assets, but those assets have no tangible root. They're not backed by anything. We can talk about Nixon taking us off the gold standard, yeah, which was one of the visible things. But that was the early '70s. Listen, way back, even as far as 1913, very wealthy men that were already wealthy, created something called the Federal Reserve. Look at your green bill, and it's a Federal Reserve note. It's a promissory note that the government, owes us that money, but the dollar is so valueless and decreasing in value in the world. It's sad. So, but it's the way the world works. So, it's not a system or institution that we're going to bring a lot of changes to, but we need to understand it. Do we understand good debt, bad debt? Do we understand consumerism and all this junk we buy? Do we understand how China is just flooding the market? I'm wearing all these garments I'm wearing, what I shave with is probably made in China. Okay, these televisions and lamps, you look underneath, made in China. China landed on the dark side of the moon. So one day we turn the moon over, made in China. That's one of my little jokes. But Chinese people know what I'm talking about. And it's a whole different mentality uh, as far as economics between countries. And therein lies the tension. Your financial literacy is going to expose uh, America's, I won't say enemies, but those countries that America has issue with are the same countries that have a different financial policy, a different financial and economic paradigm than us. You know, it's not so much their human rights violations. That's what we see on CNN. This country is human rights, which to us it is. It's a moral issue how they treat each other and their citizens, and how America can be so vocal. I can be an American, make these videos speaking out. I can go on the street and speak out, and there's so much speaking out in America, nobody's going to listen to me any damn way. But it's serious business if I did that in Russia or China or some, Iran, But putting that aside, listen, you've heard me say, extract the moral issues, let's talk economics, and suddenly the picture becomes much more clear. What you have, so these countries, Russia, China, Iran, other North Korea, it's issues with economics and how money is distributed. All our friends have something, one thing in extreme common with one another, one common denominator, and that's a central bank. You know, England, all the European nations essentially. You know, uh, any country that has strong U.S. relations has a strong central bank in there, and it's amazing. So we don't want to get off on that, but financial literacy, once you understand that, then you can begin a 180-degree turn in your thinking. Financially, I'm at a certain space, for a certain physical space, but I'm changing my mind. I'm going to go to school, which isn't necessary. Just plays out in my process of my life. Going to take some business classes, get some financial literacy under my belt. I have a financial mentor, a white man. Yeah, it's not the all white people. It is. We're talking institutions. They just happen to be those that I consider oppressing black folks. Happens to be white institution, but it's not all white people. Not all black people are good. Not all black people give a damn what I'm talking about. Right? You know what I mean? This is a personal catharsis for me. I'm inspired by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. I'd like you to get these books if you can. Um, First one was a Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask, Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice, and Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. You can find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com and the Heritage Institute in Washington, D.C. We also take a fictional look at slave life in America. Very important work here. Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, and it gives us more inside aspects of slave life, master's life, slave traders, escape, and all those good things. Behind me, you'll see hashtag us twos, Black women getting together, supporting one another in their issues. I'm going to keep this thrown up every video. Go to Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, kind of a Black Facebook. If you found me here on YouTube, you are informationally literate and you can find your flavor. Get support. Make your own videos. Articulate these things. One of the best. I was reintroduced to the idea that we can solidify our learning by teaching something to others. So this project helps me to really solidify and articulate the argument much better. Day 111, we're still in our series, Signers of the Declaration of Independence. We going ahead a little bit, and we're finding some very dense material on some of these guys. So I hope in these last few minutes we can get them in. All right. First guy up, George Reed. He's got some interesting tidbits. Okay. Oh, and also I wanted to give a shout out for the caravans coming up from Central America and constantly, obviously, from Mexico. Thousands of people. I want to recognize these people. I'm not 100% supportive because of the place of the black folks. You know, black folks are going to be displaced out of positions as these people come north seeking asylum. It's very problematic on that front. There's two more fronts I want to talk about. Number one is their home countries. That's very sad that their home countries don't support a life of well-being with so many resources on the planet, but people are killing each other, shooting each other, withholding resources and wealth, from their own people. These people are coming up thousands and thousands. It's like, wow, man, what's wrong? There's something wrong with that country for them to want to escape and run. So I just put a little note there. We recognize our South American people, not South American, but mostly Central America, essentially at this point. Wherever you're coming from the South, we recognize that, but recognize that you're hoping to usurp the space that other people inhabit that haven't even gotten their due yet. So there's some tricky issues, conversations there. I'm all for you coming for a better life and all that. If life is so bad where you're at, then you definitely don't stay. I don't stick around a community or a space where I'm not wanted, okay, or that's not safe, of course. But I'm going to be sensitive to where I'm going. I don't want to see people thrown out of their space, moved out of their space because I can't take it where I'm coming from. Something to think about. All right, first guy up, George Read. Time is short. Born 1733, died 1798. He's a representative of Maryland, lawyer, and he, uh, he's one of three people that have just kind of stuck out to me. This has come from Wikipedia, nothing special. He's one of three of the signers of the Declaration of Independence to sign the Declaration of Independence, petition to the King of Congress in 1774, and the U.S. Constitution. I think that's pretty significant, you know. The other 53 guys had their influences and were busy doing other stuff, or other important stuff. But these three documents, petition to the King, Declaration, Constitution, apparently, you know, these are very foundational documents to America, you know, that we always refer back to. You know, we can't get anything through the courts, any big issues, until we reference some of these documents. So George Read was one of the guys to be very influential on a lot of the documents. Okay, he had a problem with the British. He's one of our guys that was either captured or evaded capture. In this case, George Read evaded capture, and I wanted to say a word now about being a Federalist. And the Federalist was more for a national government. Some of the problems with government, the idea of government, you know, as we're as a nation breaking away from England, the debate there in the colonies was, you know, what kind of government do we have? We don't want a monarchy, all right? We don't want a theocracy, of course, and things like that. But, you know, the Federalists were one of the first major parties. You know, it wasn't always Democrat and Republican. You know, even today we've got other parties emerging, tea parties and green parties and stuff like that. You know, if you know anything about England's politics, they got every color of the rainbow and every name. They got so many parties and stuff. I don't know how to get anything done. But here we have more restricted. So the Federalists wanted a more nationalized government power, and things like that. And now the Federalist Party was pitted against, in the beginning, what was called the Republican Democratic Party. They were one party. I mean, can you imagine that? You know, from what we see, we see embattled Republicans and Democrats today. Very very polarized parties. But you know, in the beginning, in the germ of this country, they were one party together, polarized against the Federalists. You know, but it's important to know, you know, this country wasn't always Democrat, Republican. It's like we feel, you know, even Bernie Sanders had to get away from his independent party or whatever he was with, and now he's firmly Democrat. He's going to go. He's going to go a long way in the 2020 election. I'm sure that because he made that move, and it's not going to be a big issue. The Democrats have always actually loved him. I would say. Um, so that's a little blurb on the Federalist. He was Episcopalian. Um, no mention of slavery or interaction for George Read, and he signed. He's very active in politics. Pretty extensive resume. He was already politically active in politics and as a representative of the people. You know, of course, you know, once the Second Continental Congress came around, once people saw that they could kind of function independently away from England and the taxes, it just snowballed and built, and George Read was a representative of the will of the people, like all of them. Next guy up, Ceasar Rodney. Remember, we're going alphabetically, best we can. I hope I'm going from an accurate list. Ceasar Rodney, born 1728, died 1784. He was the what would you call the president of hopefully Maryland. My notes are a little skewed here. After George Reed, remember the governors or presidents, the focal point of power for the colonies. Initially, they were presidents over these spaces. He served as a French militia, or in the militia during the French Indian War. And the militia were, they were just the guys designed to keep the war in its place. It's the French and Indian can do what they want, but they ain't going to ramble all over town with their little war. So the militia is like, kind of serving as that buffer zone to keep the French and Indian War out there, not spilling into the colonies. He served in the militia. Very wealthy individual. The study shows that he's an example of assets going to work for him, assets buying assets. In this case, slavery was definitely a part of his life. We'll talk about that in a moment, but slavery, very big part of his life and his wealth and all that. He had one issue. This is one of the first mentions of cancer, just abiding condition. He apparently cancer on the face. He underwent painful surgeries and all that. You can expect you ain't going to get much in the 17 and early 1800s in the way of some decent surgical care. This is the beginnings of invasive medical procedures. So it wasn't a good sign, a good circumstance for him. He had to wear shrouds and then scarves on his face. Never married. Can't be all that romantic. You're hard pressed to find a female of that character when you're wearing shrouds or you have a disfigurement on your face. So he lived a bachelor's life. It's not to say he wasn't sexual, it's just he didn't openly marry anyone. He's noted for being just in time to get to Philadelphia to sign the Declaration of Independence. He arrived on July 2nd, was able to recoup, for a day or two, get up to speed, be briefed, and go sign. Back to his slavery, he had upwards of 200 slaves over an 800 to 1,000 acre piece of land to work off. So he's getting, remember, all that's unpaid labor. But that's what an asset is all about. As I get into my financial literacy, you want your asset to do that. He signed as a natural representative of the people. Ceasar Rodney, we know him as a Episcopalian. I don't see him. It doesn't say anything in the research in Wikipedia anyway. But I'm guessing with his disfigurement, he may have had many issues and wrestlings with religion, God issues, spirituality, in light of his physical condition. I've done that. I've had my ups and downs with God and religion based on whatever, if my present circumstance was not favorable or negative, then I'm more liable, to speak out and have issues with God who created the world and healed this and can speak this and that into existence. Why don't you wave your hand and fix everything? That's just not the way the world works, and that's not how God is. Uh, Fortunately, I've lived long enough now I can understand uh, hindsight, the big picture, and all that. But catch me in my late teens and early 20s, and I have the same human issues as everyone else with God. All right, we're out of time. We're going to just continue on. That's day 111. Out of the way, 365 days towards racial change. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.